As more states move to legalize marijuana and conversations shift around substance use, we're also facing a parallel crisis, the growing rates of opioid addiction among teens. What starts with a prescription or what seems to be harmless can quickly spiral. That's why the book we're discussing today matters now more than ever. Heroine follows a high school athlete who becomes addicted to painkillers after an injury. It's raw, emotional, and brutally honest. A story that's helped countless readers see addiction not as a moral failing, but as a human struggle. And yet, heroin has been banned in schools for glorifying drug use despite doing the exact opposite. But heroin isn't this author's only powerful work. She's written award-winning novels like The Female of the Species, A Madness So Discreet, and Be Not Far From Me, each exploring the darker sides of survival, justice, and resilience. A former high school librarian turned storyteller, she writes books young people need, even when adults try to take them off shelves. Please welcome Edgar Award-winning novelist Mindy McGinnis.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for having me. My dog is here too. He has to be with me at all times. So this is Gus.
You were a school librarian before becoming a full-time writer. Were there any books or authors from your childhood that sparked your love of storytelling or inspired you to write?
I can't say there was any one book or one author. I read so much. Like I would go to bed. I was a little bit of I was a kid that struggled to fall asleep. And my mom and dad would just give me literally like a stack of little golden books. And I would just lay in bed and I would read one and then I would throw it. And then I would read the next one and then I would toss it across the room. And my mom and dad just said they sat and they listened. And once they stopped hearing books get thrown across the room, they knew that I'd fallen asleep. And, I was like 5 or 6, but I was just always reading, something of an insomniac. And so just read a lot when I was a little kid. And it just grew and grew. I'm a person that grew up in a house that was full of books, and everyone in it was a reader, whether it was a novel or Newsweek or whatever it was, I was seeing adults read all the time. And it was just a very natural hobby for me to pick up. And actually, I was just having a conversation with someone the other day about Island of the Blue Dolphins, which is by Scott Odell. Like, I wouldn't say that it was pivotal or anything like that, but I probably read it in fourth or fifth grade, and I still think about it. So, that is something that has staying power. Scott Odell is really good. But no, and then Stephen King. I started reading Stephen King when I was you know, by some standards probably too young, but I turned out okay, I think. So, Stephen King definitely like mattered and was powerful, mostly because even though I had a great childhood and a lovely life, my brain just is interested in dark things, difficult things, mysterious things, weird things. That was just my brain was always like this, even when I was a little kid. And so therefore all the stories that happened in my head were dark or weird or strange. And I wasn't being given any books that reflected that. Like all the books that were written for young people back then, which this would have been the 80s and the early 90s, they were all very positive and bad things didn't really happen fairly often. It was very clean and very didactic. And so the very first time I picked up a Stephen King book, it was really liberating for me because all the stories that happened in my head were dark or weird or gross. And I didn't think I could write them down. Like there was something wrong with them just by dint of being dark. And then I started reading Stephen King and I was like, "Oh no, you're definitely allowed to do this and you can actually make quite a good living at it." So that was impactful. It's more of like investigating the darker sides of people. Like Stephen King writes horror, but I think anyone would tell you that the scariest things in his books, it's usually what people are willing to do to each other, which is what I really enjoy focusing on, like the gray areas in the world. Black and white is not how good and evil work, The world has a lot of gray in it, and we don't really think about things that way. But there's a lot of room for storytelling in those areas, and that's what I'm interested in writing about. So, Stephen King investigating aspects of humanity that aren't always pretty or right or correct was something that made me go, "Oh, okay, yeah, no, that is interesting to me." the person that starts a babysitting club is not interesting to me.
Many of your books explore dark, complex topics: trauma, survival, violence, and recovery. What draws you to writing stories that dive deep into the parts of life people often shy away from?
I think it's specifically because people shy away from them. That's where my interest lies and always has. And like I said, I don't have a great explanation for that. A lot of people assume that I must have had like a really hard childhood or some pretty intense capital T trauma in my life. And like, everyone has trauma, but I can't say that I have been afflicted or suffered more than the average human, to be honest with you. Um, it is just what I am interested in writing. You don't have a plot unless there is conflict. And I also, going back to the question about books that you read when you were little, I ask people this question a lot when I'm with a group of readers or writers. It's like, what do you remember? And you don't have to tell me what it was, but it's like, what do you remember from when you were little? Movies, TV shows, as just a scene or a book or a song. It's like, what has stuck with you from when you were really little? And I bet you 9 times out of 10, it's something that was sad. We remember sad things, and sad things stick, and sad things impact you. Tragedy, like even in fiction, like it impacts you. And it's a way to learn about, life is unfair. And it just is. So there's a way to learn about that through fiction before you have to go out into the world and experience it. But I really think that those sad things were the things that I carried with me on out of book, like Where the Red Fern Grows, Nobody's Okay Now, And so it's like those books are the ones that carried with me. And I don't want to write a book that someone reads and is like, yeah, that was fun. And then they're good and they set it aside and they're not going to remember it and they didn't underline anything. It's like beach reads are wonderful and they have a purpose and I read them, but I don't want to write them. I want to write things that somebody's got a pen out and they're underlining things or they're going, "Oh yeah," like they're nodding their head like, "Yeah, I totally know what you're talking about there." That's what I want to evoke out of people and what I want to write. And I'm sure that there are plenty of people that have those reactions to romances and positive books and happy books. I don't. So I write what I write because I write the things that impacted me the most, and I want to impact people.
So, just to recap, for you at least, the most memorable thing that sticks in your mind is a lot of the sad stuff.
Sad things, tragic things. Dogs dying, that's always big. Whenever the dog dies, like that stands out. But yeah, like even books, movies, Fox and the Hound, freaking Bambi, right? It's like these are the things that I remember and carry with me. It's the sad things, I mean, I'm talking about Disney now, but like the scene in Lady and the Tramp where all the dogs at the pound are crying and it's raining and it's just like that's what you talk to me about Lady and the Tramp. I don't think about the spaghetti and then they're kissing and I don't do that. I think about the scene in the pound where all the dogs are crying. Because when I was a kid, I was watching that and I was just like, oh, and like just lost in my own emotions because of that scene. And then when, Lady and the Tramp are eating spaghetti and they kiss, I'm just like, that's weird. Like, I mean, it's just like what I react to and what I feel an affinity with.
Let's talk about Heroine. What inspired you to write about a book centered on opioid addiction through the eyes of a high school athlete? And why did you feel this was a story teens needed?
So a lot of the things that I write about are hard and they're difficult. And I think a lot of adults either don't remember what it was like to be a teen or they've like purposely tried to forget or they were blessed and they made it through unscathed. I don't know. But the world's happening to all of us. The world is happening, the same world that adults move through is the world that teens are moving through. So, teens are being raped, teens are being shot, teens are being exposed to drugs. Like they're just younger than adults, but they're moving through the same world. And so they need to be equipped for these things. I got the idea for Heroine when I was visiting a school in a very, very rural, very poor part of Ohio. They'd asked me to come and speak about one of my earlier books. And so this was back in like 2014, 2015. And when I got there, the librarian who'd organized the event said, "Hey, I'm really sorry. Some kids have to get up and leave in the middle of your presentation because there is a funeral for a student today. And I was like, oh gosh, I am so sorry. And I asked, was it a car accident? Because I was a teenager in the 90s. And in the 90s, when teenagers died, we died in car accidents. So I asked, and she said, no, it was an overdose. And this was before people were really talking about the opioid epidemic. And I just went, oh, and I was shocked. And she could see it on my face. And she was like, oh no, don't be surprised. Like, this is our third one this year. Like, it was just right in the center of what now people are starting to recognize in Appalachia of being kind of the heart of the opioid epidemic and the pill mills and all of those things. So there was a girl that was a junior. She was on the prom planning committee and she asked if she could talk to me before she left for the funeral. And I said, yeah, of course. And she was just telling me about what it was like and how things were there. And then she told me that she was on the prom planning committee and they'd already decided on their theme for that spring and they were going to do black tie. So the girls wore little black dresses and the guys wore tuxes. And they had decided this because, again, it's a very poor area. People don't have money. And the girls knew that they were going to be going to more funerals and they wanted a dress that they could double. This is my prom dress and my funeral dress. And I was just like, oh, Lord, that is the most depressing thing I've ever heard. So that's like where the interest came from. And then having a conversation with the staff there and them telling me how bad it was in their community and then starting to read about it and actually looking for information before it kind of blew up in the news. It was all very interesting. So like back to the concept of teens being exposed to these things, just 2 weeks ago at the beginning, well, more than that, but in the middle of March, I was in Chicago for like 2 weeks and I was talking about all of my books, but I was sitting in the staff room with some of the staff at one of the schools I was at, and one of their teachers told me that he actually had a student like OD in class a few years ago. Yeah, she asked to use the bathroom. She went to the bathroom, she shot up, she came back, and she literally died in his classroom. Like fell out of her chair and died on the floor. And they were able to save her. Like they had this crash cart there for heart attacks and they were able to revive her and she lived, and I actually believe she got clean, if I remember correctly, from the conversation with the teacher. But it was like, yeah, I mean, kids are doing heroin, guys. Like, this isn't a big, like, shocking statement. It's happening.
Heroin has been banned in multiple schools for allegedly glorifying drug use. Yet you've heard from readers who say your book helped them make life-saving choices. What's your response to the people who want this book off of shelves?
So, am I allowed to swear on here? Will you bleep me?
No, you can do it.
Whatever I want. Okay. So, basically, if you've read the book, you know that it doesn't glorify drugs. My main character shits herself in public. Like that, no one is reading that and going, yep, that's my goal. I want to shit myself in public. Like that's just not what's happening. So, no, the book does not glorify drugs at all. What it does do is show people doing drugs and enjoying the experience because unfortunately when you write for young people what some audience members want is that a person does drugs, has sex, smokes a cigarette, does something, considered sinful, and then there's an immediate consequence. Like they wake up in the morning and they've got 3 legs and polio, and, suddenly there's a cat growing out of their chest. Like something horrible has happened to them because they made this choice. And that is not how it works. People participate in drugs and they think they've got it under control and they think they're just having a good time until they aren't anymore. And everything is lost and it's too late. And so that's what I wrote. I wrote the actual experience of sliding into addiction. And I've had addicts like functioning and recovered contact me and just be like, man, like you really nailed that. And I have had like more than a few teenagers reach out and it's like they're having a good time on the weekend or they're casually like popping a pill every now and then And then they read my book and they'll email me and they'll be like, dude, I'm not doing that anymore. Like, wow, I didn't realize that this enjoyment that I'm having could have a serious critical ending. And I've also had addicts that are recovered addicts reach out to me, more than a few, reach out to me and say, damn, I wish that I would have had this book when I started down this path because it would have impacted me. Like I would have known what was going on and I would have seen the signs sooner. Um, hopefully, and so that I'll tell you something that has never happened, not once. I have never had a single person reach out to me and say, hey, I read your books and then I started doing heroin because that's what I got out of the book. Like that has never happened, not once, never a single time has that ever happened. So taking heroin off the shelves, it's one of those things where, like, at the heart of the situation, oddly enough, ironically, we have the same goals. So people that want to ban heroin or any of my books or anyone else's books, they want to protect children, specifically their children, hopefully, but they want to protect children. They believe that children need to be protected from the world. And they believe that they are protected by being sheltered and never being exposed to these things. And I believe the complete opposite, that you are more safe if you are educated and you understand the world and the things that are going on out there. Do I think that a second grader should read heroin? No. Like, let's use our common sense, right? But at a certain age, when the kids are being exposed to these things socially, etc., I think that they are protected by being educated, not by being sheltered. So that's where I've always landed with the censorship question. It's like there is no part of me that wakes up every morning and is like, yep, I want to go, make some kids' moral levels drop. Like, that is not at all what's going on. Like, I am genuinely worried about younger generations, not just teenagers, but like 20 somethings too. And like, we live in a very odd world now. My generation, we kind of bridged this gap where it's like I went all the way through high school and didn't have a cell phone and the internet didn't really exist yet until I was in college. And so it's like we know what life was like pre tech constant presence. And I would not want to be a teenager now. I would not want to deal with, I mean, I hardly interact in a healthy way with my phone now, and I'm 46. Like, it's just like, it is, it's a little addiction machine. You want to talk about addiction, phones are boy. But anyway, yeah, I want to just like look at the things that are going on in the real lives of real teenagers, and like what are causing problems right now, what are some of the issues that they're facing. And at the time that I wrote Heroine, the opioid epidemic was really front and center in the news. It's still going on. We're not talking about it as much anymore. This is still a major problem. It's just not in the news because the news has a lot to do right now. Lots of things that need to be reported on. But my book that comes out in November, which is called How Girls Are Made, actually has a focus in one of the POVs on social media and like the damages of social media and how painful it can be interacting with it. And that's something that I've really become concerned of, like for myself as well, but for everyone, not just teens, but particularly teens. And so, it's just like whenever I see something that is present and is a problem in the lives of young people, I'm like, oh, there's something there that needs to be discussed. This needs to be talked about.
Your books don't shy away from difficult truths, and because of that, they've been challenged and even banned.
Yep.
But for the readers who do get to read them, especially Heroine, what's the one message you hope they carry with them, even when the world tries to silence stories like yours?
For anyone, for any of my books, and Heroine is a good example, but any of them, People often ask me, how do you want people to feel when they read your books? And it's like, I don't really care. I'm not writing to make people feel a certain way. I can't control other people's emotions, but I want them to think. I want people to think after they read my books. Like that is the biggest thing I can ask for. Whichever book it is of mine. I want them to think. And you had a great intro line. You were talking about, addiction as a human problem and not, a problem of, a certain socioeconomic level or, anything like that. And it's just like literally, an addict could literally be anyone. And I cannot tell you every time I do an event where I'm speaking specifically about heroin, everyone that comes up to me afterwards has a story and they'll be like my aunt, my brother, my husband, my cousin, my sister. Everybody has someone that this has touched and pretending like it's not there, shoving it under the bed, ignoring it. Like these are not how we deal with problems. Like this is not healthy. So yeah, I just want people to think when they read my books, when they read Heroine. It's written in the first POV for a reason. So Mickey, the main character, she gets to a point where she needs to execute something in order to perform her sport. She's having trouble because she is going through withdrawal and she's physically ill. And she's like, man, I got to get some hair. Like, I have to shoot up before this game so that I can function. And because the POV and the narrative is all the reader is in the shoes of Mickey. And I can't tell you how many people have been like, yeah, when I'm reading that whole chapter, I'm like, oh God, I hope she finds some heroin soon. And then they're like, oh no, wait, no, that's bad. Like, we need her to like go through withdrawal and fail horribly so that she realizes. But when you actually put people in those shoes, it changes things. And I just want people, any book, think, but empathy. Just build some freaking empathy. We're really low on that right now.
What would you say to a parent who doesn't want their kid reading one of your books or any book they're uncomfortable with? How should families navigate that?
So, like, at the end of the day, a parent is the literal guardian of a child. And if a parent says, and this was my policy when I was working in a library, if a parent says this book is not appropriate for my child, then they are correct because that is their child and they know their child. And they're like, no, this is inappropriate for my child. That's a parenting decision. And I am not the parent of that child. So that is their realm. It's when they say this book is not appropriate for any child that there's a problem, and that's censorship. And you don't get to decide what another child may or may not find relevant in their lives. You don't know what might actually save someone's life. And just because your kid, you believe, doesn't mess around with drugs, plenty of kids are exposed to things that some adults can't even get their heads around. So I always tell my mother, I love my mother very much, but she gets a little rattled at some of the things that I write about. And I always tell her, I'm like, Mom, it's not Nancy Drew out there anymore. It's just not. It's like people are hurting and things are happening to young people that I believe probably always have. I just think at a rate at this point that is greater than ever before. And the pressures are greater because of social media. But yeah, like ultimately, a parent gets to make a decision for a minor child about what they should or should not read. I would ask that the parent actually read the book before they make that decision because, there are a million lists out there circulating right now, and I'm probably on every one of them. And, you can't just go down that list and be like, oh, these books are all bad, right? Like, that's not true. Everyone has the right to say, my child, this book is inappropriate for my child, but you cannot know that until you read it. So, and I'm always here for conversations. Like, I will have a conversation with someone that does believe that my book should be banned. It's like, yeah, sure. Like, I will talk to you about this, and you can tell me why you think that, and I can tell you why I think otherwise. As long as people are listening and there's reciprocity and conversation and not just talking points, then I'm always open to having conversations about what people are concerned about and why.
Heroine isn't just a story about addiction. It's about the real struggles young people face, the kind we don't always talk about but urgently need to. Stories like this remind us why books matter, especially when they're being banned or challenged. Thank you for reminding us that books can be lifelines, and that even when people try to silence them, the truth still finds a way.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Your answers were great.
Awesome. I'm glad you feel that way.